Hello, my friends. Just think about for a moment how much work you have done on yourself for so many years. And yet, so much of your life, of our lives, is still not reflecting the fullness that we are, the divine expression that we are, that has no limitations. That means that it is also not limited to um, create a limitation for itself. That is what I see that is covering our true identity, our I am presence. And what we do is, so let's say we came down here to experience life in duality. That was a choice we had. That was apparently a movement from within. We signed up for it. We came down. We want to experience what it's like to live as if we are separate from God, as if we're separate from the fullness, from that who we truly are. And that we have been doing pretty good for a while, but I think a lot of us are now ready to get out of those limitations and start realizing who and what we truly are. So if you are in that category where you feel done with it, then you will also notice that you will feel done with trying to improve and expand on or heal or become more successful as that limited self that we keep projecting outside of us as if that is who we are. And that character, that identity is what we keep changing. When we started becoming more conscious of who we are, what's going on in the world, maybe many, many years ago, we started working on that identity, right? We started maybe doing therapy, encounter groups, started meditating, all these things. It's great. It's part of the movement back to oneness and freedom. And now, my friends, we have come to the place to stop that also, to not to not engage with that part that still needs healing, still has issues, still is not fulfilled, still is lacking funds. I don't know if this makes sense to you. I will do my best to clarify it because it feels like that's the next big unfolding in my expression that I can talk about now here. And so as long as we are I am presence, I am fulfillment, I am everything, I am health, I am abundance. That is the true nature of who we are in and as our I am presence. That one created this identity, false identity, right? A separate sense of self, a separate sense, separate from the divine. I've talked a lot about that. That is what we have been living in our own experience and amongst each other because we are all doing it. And by us all doing it, it almost reinforces how true our false sense of self is. And because we keep running into trouble like health, lack of finances, like problems in relationships, anxiety, internal emotional things, mental things, we have to remember that this is a separate sense of self. And the more we work on it to improve it in whatever way, the more real it seems. And then we have releases here and there, we start feeling better. But there is a tendency to always come back to that core identity that has all these problems. So we are feeding that false sense of self in everything we do, how we feel, how we speak, how we act, because that's where all our attention is. And we're trying to make that false sense of self better. It's like an improvement project we're all on. And we may improve some of it for sure, so we feel better, but we are still separate. We are still imagining or pretending that we are separate from our own fullness, from our own divinity, from our own fulfillment. So as much as it has probably helped us to do all these encounter groups and therapy and coaching and meditation and breath work and all that stuff, and it has an impact, as it should, but the impact that I see it should have, not that I'm a should person, but that would be beneficial to have, is that we can let go of that grip of the attachment of this separate sense of self. Then we are moving out of it. We are liberating our energies so that now we can place it here. So my invitation is today to maybe choose to not try and improve yourself anymore, to not talk about it all the time to all your friends and family and yourself, to keep regurgitating it over and over, because it is the separate sense of self that is doing all that, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it. And it just stays in place. Maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, whatever. But it's still that separate sense of self that we're feeding. We're basically feeding it a good meal every time. Every time you go and talk to your family or friend about how terrible you feel and how hard life is, and you are talking as this separate sense of self. And as you're talking about it, you're feeding it, right? It's an energy, but you're not aware who and what is doing that. It's that separate sense of self. So the very important thing in order to let go of it and leave it behind is to know what it actually is and find out that that is really not who you are. But as I talked about not too long ago in a video up here, you can click on that, is that we are very comfortable in that false sense of self. And so even though we may work on it and we may do workshops in making more money because we want to pay our bills, there is still a part of us that feels very comfortable because it is so familiar to be that separate sense of self. And that part doesn't want to change into something that it doesn't know, that it is unfamiliar with. And that's why there is the part that wants to, but we rarely make it there, or we make it there and then we go back because we're not fully familiar with the new expression of our identity that is much more free, abundant, healthy, loved, happy. All the neural pathways in us are so wired to be this false sense of limited identity. And it really takes work to change that. It takes time. It takes practice, a lot of practice. It's like we have to become that freed up I am identity from the core out. Not just doing some mental gymnastics, although they might help. It's good to go to the gym. But if we don't keep doing it until we have reached a point where we are so clear that this is not me anymore. This is like bye-bye, we are really done. And I have talked a lot about that. I think I did a video about that where you basically said, I'm not interested anymore. And that's because you are not interested anymore. And that's when you start stepping out. And that can be uncomfortable. There might be discomfort for a while because this is so familiar and it's terrible as it is. It's familiar, it feels safe. So there's a tendency to go back. We've all done it. We're still all doing it. But at some point, it's like you have to choose. Do I want to come back just because it's familiar and it seems safe? Or do I really want to say goodbye to it? Cut the cord. So when you do that, I mean, it's like any addiction. I mean, yeah, we are addicted to our separate sense of self because it's all we know. Just like a smoker, an alcoholic, this is who they are. It's so familiar and it totally ruins their lives if it's alcohol, let's say, in a bad way. But it's familiar. I would know who I would be if I'm not this anymore. That's scary. What are people going to say about me if I suddenly, am more confident, more loving, more giving, whatever it is? What are they going to say about me? So that's the old part that is afraid what other people will say. So you see, you need to kind of go through the layers of this false identity. There's a lot of layers. That's why this is not a one night, one day job. This is like consistently that we do this until we feel that the new identity, which is our true identity, but with the light shining through the old, or putting the old aside and now let the light shine, which would be like, I'm fulfilled. I talked about it on a number of videos. I am now somebody who's fulfilled, right? I am somebody. That's an identity. It's a very good in between phrase because you have to shift your identity. You have to become somebody else as what you're familiar with. And that's why it can get scary to live in the unknown, where you don't see the evidence of it yet. You're looking, and the old is pulling you back. So here you're out trying to be somebody else. And this is pulling, come back. This is weird. This is not you. This is not who you are. You're somebody who's always struggling. You're somebody who's always on the lookout for the next danger. You can't just be relaxed and peaceful. That's not safe. And that's the battle we go through. And we have to stick with it. We have to stick with, I am somebody who is at peace. I am somebody who feels safe to receive abundance, because that is a much truer expression of you in this dimension. I always want to make sure that we understand that in this dimension, it's different than in other dimensions. And I'm not an expert on other dimensions, but I do know that the limited identities that we take on here don't exist in these higher, evolved, expanded dimensions. But for here, we can certainly choose an identity that is much more in alignment with the divine, with our true I am presence. And then at some point, that can also fall away. We don't need to remind ourselves. We don't need to be a somebody who. We just are fully aligned because we have been practicing it. Little by little, we start feeling more comfortable being somebody who is fulfilled, who expects fulfillment to come to us, because that is how it works without the limited sense of self. It just flows. Everything we need is already here. We are still living in an unlimited universe where you don't have to work hard to get something. That's the old self. This is like we just know somewhere deep inside in our I am presence. We just know that fulfillment just flows around us, through us, in us, fills us full. There's nothing we need to do to make that happen. We just need to keep that layer of limitation, that identity that is afraid of abundance, that is afraid of love, that feels safer in its familiar misery. So this shift into our true identity or into an intermediate identity that is not the old limitations, it might be more expanded experiences or expressions, still maybe with some limitations. But eventually we just move through these stages until we land here. And now we feel familiar. This is like, oh, this is my new self. This is my new true somebody who. And then you start feeling more and more familiar and comfortable in it. It gives you a sense of confidence. It actually becomes a conviction. But you can't go from feeling like a limited sense of self to a convinced identity fully aligned with the divine. It doesn't quite work that way, right? We need to kind of move that way where more and more we shed the old and more we open up to receive what is true, what is more true. I mean, what is truth, right? It's probably different expression for all of us. So we need to come to the place where it feels true for us, that we feel aligned with the divine, where we are relaxed, where we are at peace, where we are love, where we are successful, fulfilled, our natural expression. So the shift into a new identity is key. There is no way you will ever get here and stay here if you keep working on yourself to improve yourself. If you use that work to detach, to loosen the grip so you can start experiencing, I would say go for it. But again, this is how I see it. That doesn't mean it's the truth for everyone, but it is for me. And that's, of course, what I share with you. Please give it a try and reach out if you need help with that, if you need support in letting go. Trust me, we all need it. And then the more and more we feel identified with something without this old stuff, life just gets easier in a way. And we start, for a while also, we will start acting and doing things that resonate with that new way of being, so that it really does become embodied and not just something we keep grasping for or praying for or whatever. No, we just become it because we actually are it. Or think, okay, I think I'm going to hold here. Feel free to like, subscribe, share. And of course, comment, share with us what your experience is. Have a beautiful day, my friends.